Welcome, coin enthusiasts. Today, we're diving into the top 4 ultra-rare and most valuable half-dollars that every collector dreams of finding. From the elusive 1972 No-Mint Mark Kennedy half-dollar to the striking 1974 D. Denver issue and the highly sought-after 1989 P. Philadelphia coin. These half-dollars aren't just coins. They're pieces of history, hidden treasures, and collectibles that could be worth far more than you think. Stay with us as we explore the history, rare features, potential errors, and true market value of each coin. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for in your own collection. Don't miss a single one. These coins could change the way you see your pocket change forever. So let's get started. First up, the 1972 Kennedy half-dollar with no mint mark, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, is not just another old American coin. It is a silent witness to one of the most emotionally charged eras in United States history, a coin born less than a decade after the tragic assassination of President John F. Kennedy, whose legacy forever changed the nation. When you hold this half-dollar in your hand, you are holding a symbol of remembrance, patriotism, and transition, minted at a time when America was still healing from the wounds of the 1960s and stepping cautiously into a new decade filled with uncertainty, social change, and economic challenges. The absence of a mint mark tells collectors immediately that this coin came from Philadelphia, the oldest and most historic U.S. mint, a facility that has produced coins since the very birth of a nation, giving the 1972 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar an added layer of historical gravity. By 1972, the Kennedy half-dollar had already evolved from its original 90% silver composition into a copper-nickel-clad format, reflecting a pivotal shift in American coinage driven by rising silver prices and changing economic realities. Yet despite losing its silver content, the coin never lost its emotional value in the eyes of the public. The obverse proudly displays Gilroy Roberts' iconic left-facing portrait of President Kennedy, calm yet resolute, with finely detailed hairlines, a strong jaw, and an expression that seems to carry both hope and sorrow, while the bold inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" frame the design with timeless American ideals, and the date 1972 anchors the coin firmly in a turbulent moment of history. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's majestic presidential seal dominates the field, featuring the heraldic eagle clutching an olive branch and arrows, symbols of peace and strength, surrounded by stars representing the states of the Union, a design that feels especially powerful when viewed through the lens of the Cold War era, the Vietnam War, and the shifting global role of the United States during the early 1970s. What makes the 1972 no-mint mark half-dollar especially fascinating to collectors is not just its design or history, but the story of its production, as millions were minted for circulation at a time when half-dollars were already beginning to disappear from everyday use, hoarded by the public as keepsakes rather than spent as money, turning many of these coins into accidental collectibles from the moment they left the mint. While most examples are common in circulated condition, sharp-eyed collectors know that high-grade uncirculated pieces, especially those with strong luster, clean fields, and well-defined details, can command significantly higher premiums, and error coins, such as double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or weak strikes, can transform an ordinary 50-cent piece into a highly sought-after treasure worth many times its face value. The 1972 Kennedy half-dollar also occupies a unique psychological space in American numismatics, bridging the gap between the silver-rich past and the modern-clad era, reminding collectors that value is not measured only in precious metal content, but also in symbolism, nostalgia, and cultural memory. For many families, this coin sat quietly in drawers, piggy banks, and inherited collections, passed down from parents to children as a reminder of a president who inspired a generation and a nation that learned how fragile hope can be. Today, as collectors revisit the coins of the 1970s, the 1972 no-mint mark Kennedy half-dollar is being re-examined with fresh eyes, appreciated not just as a mass-produced coin, but as a historical artifact that reflects the mood, priorities, and resilience of America during a pivotal decade. Whether you find one in an old collection, a roll from the bank, or a forgotten box of coins, this half-dollar invites you to pause, look closer, and ask yourself what stories it has witnessed, whose hands it has passed through, and why it still matters more than 50 years later. In a world racing toward digital currency and cashless transactions, the 1972 Kennedy half-dollar stands as a tangible reminder that money once carried faces, stories, and emotions, and that sometimes the most powerful treasures are hiding in plain sight, waiting patiently for someone who understands their true worth. Next up, the 1973 D. Kennedy half-dollar, struck at the historic Denver Mint, is far more than a simple 50-cent piece. It is a coin that carries the weight of American history, culture, and evolving numismatic trends. A coin minted during a time when the United States was navigating the complex aftermath of the Vietnam War, political scandals, and a society in transition, making it both a reflection of its era and a collectible treasure for enthusiasts today. When you hold this coin, you're holding a piece of a decade that was defined by resilience and change, a period when Americans were rediscovering the value of trust, patriotism, and continuity. And the small D, mint mark beneath Kennedy's portrait, connects it to the Denver Mint, a facility with a long-standing reputation for high-quality coinage production, making this half-dollar an immediately recognizable piece for serious collectors. The obverse displays Gilroy Roberts' iconic portrait of President John F. Kennedy, his calm and resolute expression perfectly capturing the spirit of leadership and hope, framed by the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," while the date 1973 anchors it firmly within a year of historical significance, when Americans were adjusting to societal shifts, economic pressures, and the lingering memory of a leader whose legacy shaped a generation. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's presidential seal dominates, with a majestic eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by stars representing the states of the Union, symbolizing strength, peace, and unity, values that were especially poignant during the early 1970s and that continue to resonate with collectors today. Unlike the Kennedy half-dollars of 1964, which were struck in 90% silver, or the 1965 to 1970 issues with 40% silver, the 1973 D is composed entirely of copper-nickel-clad layers, reflecting a full transition into the modern era of coinage designed for durability and everyday use. Yet its historical, emotional, and collectible significance remains undeniable, as the coin stands as a bridge between the silver-rich past and the fully clad coins of the late 20th century. By 1973, half-dollars were already becoming less common in circulation, often hoarded by collectors, passed down through families, or quietly tucked away in drawers, which means that well-preserved examples today are increasingly rare, especially those with full mint luster, sharp details, and unblemished surfaces. What makes the 1973 D. Kennedy half-dollar particularly compelling to collectors are the subtle variations and potential minting errors that can transform an ordinary coin into a high-value collectible, from minor die cracks to double die anomalies, off-center strikes, or planchet imperfections, all of which are actively sought after in the numismatic market. This coin also tells a story beyond metal and minting. It reflects the changing American economy, the evolution of currency, and the enduring popularity of Kennedy half-dollars as both a historical artifact and an investment piece, bridging generations of collectors who remember the original Kennedy issues and younger enthusiasts discovering them for the first time. For families, hobbyists, and professional numismatists alike, the 1973 D. Kennedy half-dollar embodies nostalgia, value, and history in one compact coin, reminding us that sometimes the most powerful treasures are hiding in plain sight, waiting to be recognized, studied, and appreciated. Whether you find one in a rolled set of coins, an inherited collection, or tucked away for decades, this half-dollar is not just 50 cents. It is a tangible piece of America's past, a collectible that tells stories of leadership, resilience, and historical transition, quietly waiting for the right collector to uncover its true significance and value. Next up, the 1989 P. Kennedy half-dollar, struck at the historic Philadelphia Mint, is far more than a simple 50-cent coin. It is a powerful time capsule from the closing moments of the 20th century, a period when the world was standing at the edge of massive change, and America itself was redefining its identity in a rapidly shifting global landscape. When this coin was minted, the Cold War was reaching its dramatic end. The Berlin Wall was about to fall, and the United States was moving from an era of tension into one of transformation, and all of that history is quietly embedded in the metal of this $50. The bold P mint mark on the obverse instantly identifies it as a Philadelphia issue, marking an important moment in U.S. coinage history, because Philadelphia had only recently begun placing mint marks on circulating coins, making late 1980s P coins especially interesting to collectors who appreciate subtle changes in minting traditions. The obverse features Gilroy Roberts' timeless portrait of President John F. Kennedy, a design that had already become one of the most recognizable and emotionally charged images in American numismatics, showing Kennedy with a calm, forward-looking expression that seems perfectly suited to the hopeful yet uncertain atmosphere of 1989, while the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" frame the portrait with ideals that felt especially meaningful during a year when freedom and unity were dominating global headlines. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's powerful presidential seal fills the field, with the eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch, symbolizing America's enduring balance between strength and peace, surrounded by stars representing the states, a design that resonates deeply when viewed against the backdrop of the Cold War's final chapter. Unlike the early Kennedy $50 struck in silver, the 1989 P $50 is composed of copper-nickel-clad layers, a reminder of how U.S. coinage had fully transitioned into the modern era, focusing on durability and circulation rather than precious metal content. Yet despite its base metal composition, this coin holds immense historical and collectible value for those who understand context over composition. By 1989, $50 were rarely seen in everyday transactions, often overlooked by the public and quietly set aside, which makes well-preserved examples increasingly appealing to collectors today, especially those found in high-grade uncirculated condition with strong mint luster, clean surfaces, and sharp details in Kennedy's hair and the eagle's feathers. What truly elevates the 1989 P. Kennedy $50 in the eyes of collectors is its potential for varieties and minting anomalies, as late 20th century minting technology, while advanced, still produced fascinating errors such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, weak strikes, and occasional double die characteristics, each turning an otherwise common coin into a standout collectible that can command significant premiums in the right condition. This coin also represents a generational bridge, connecting collectors who remember the Kennedy era firsthand with younger numismatists, discovering these designs through inherited collections, coin rolls, or late-night curiosity sparked by the realization that history often hides in the smallest places. The 1989 P. Kennedy $50 tells a quieter story than its silver predecessors, but it is no less important because it reflects a nation at the brink of a new world order, a society transitioning into the digital age, and a currency system adapting to modern realities while still honoring the legacy of a president who inspired millions. Today, as collectors reevaluate modern-era coinage, the 1989 P $50 is gaining renewed attention not for what it is made of, but for what it represents. A closing chapter of Cold War history, a milestone in mint mark tradition, and a reminder that even coins often dismissed as ordinary can carry extraordinary stories. The next time you come across an old $50 dated 1989 with a small P beneath Kennedy's neck, take a moment to look closer, because in your hand you may be holding not just 50 cents, but a powerful symbol of the moment when the world stood on the edge of change, and history quietly passed through everyday pockets without anyone noticing. Next up, the 1974 D. Kennedy $50, struck at the Denver Mint, is far more than a simple 50-cent piece. It is a quiet survivor of one of the most turbulent decades in American history, a coin born during a time of political uncertainty, economic strain, and cultural transformation that reshaped the United States in lasting ways. Minted just 11 years after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, this coin still carried the emotional weight of a nation that had not forgotten its fallen leader, and by 1974 that memory had blended with a new sense of realism as America confronted the aftermath of the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, and a deepening energy crisis that affected every household. The small but significant D mint mark beneath Kennedy's neck identifies this $50 as a Denver issue, connecting it to a mint known for strong strikes and high production numbers. Yet even with millions produced, These coins were already vanishing from everyday circulation, pulled aside by the public as keepsakes, souvenirs, or forgotten savings, turning many 1974 D-half dollars into unintended collectibles from the moment they left the mint. The obverse features Gilroy Roberts' enduring portrait of John F. Kennedy, facing left with a composed and thoughtful expression that seems to reflect the seriousness of the era itself, while the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" surround the design with ideals that felt both tested and essential during the mid-1970s. And the date 1974 anchors the coin to a year when Americans were questioning leadership, trust, and the future of their nation. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's powerful presidential seal dominates the field, with a heraldic eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch, a visual reminder of America's constant balance between strength and peace, framed by stars representing the states of the Union, a design that takes on deeper meaning when viewed through the lens of Cold War tensions and domestic unrest. Unlike the early Kennedy half-dollars of the 1960s that were struck in silver, the 1974 D-half dollar is composed of copper-nickel-clad layers, reflecting the full transition of U.S. coinage into a modern, cost-efficient system driven by rising metal prices and changing economic realities. Yet despite lacking precious metal content, this coin carries a richness of historical value that many modern collectors are only now beginning to fully appreciate. What makes the 1974 D. Kennedy half-dollar especially intriguing today is the growing demand for high-grade examples, as truly uncirculated coins with strong mint luster, clean surfaces, and sharp detail in Kennedy's hair and the eagle's feathers are becoming increasingly difficult to find, and when discovered, they can command premiums far above face value. Era collectors also pay close attention to this date and mint mark, searching for off-center strikes, clip planchets, weak strikes, die cracks, and subtle double-die characteristics, any of which can transform an ordinary half-dollar into a standout collectible with surprising market value. The 1974 D-half-dollar occupies a unique position in American numismatics, sitting at the crossroads between the emotionally driven hoarding of the 1960s and the largely ignored circulation of later decades, making it a perfect example of how public perception can influence a coin's survival rate and long-term appeal. For many people, this coin lived quietly in desk drawers, old jars, or inherited collections, never spent, rarely examined, and slowly forgotten, until a new generation of collectors began to rediscover the stories hidden in modern-era coinage. Today, as cash fades from daily life and physical coins become less common, the 1974 D. Kennedy half-dollar feels more meaningful than ever, serving as a tangible reminder of a decade when America faced its doubts head-on and continued forward, imperfect but resilient. The next time you come across an old half-dollar dated 1974 with a small D mint mark, take a moment to study it closely, because in your hand you may be holding not just 50 cents, but a powerful artifact of survival, transition, and endurance, quietly waiting to be recognized for the history it carries and the story it still has left to tell.